All right, you're unmuted and you're streaming.
All right, I've been open the Streets, Sidewalks and Parking Committee meeting. I'm the chair, Josh Palmer, James Niemeyer to my left, and Grant Russell to my right are on the committee. And first up on the agenda, sidewalks. Jeremy, if you're ready.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
I was gonna say, come on, you guys.
What?
Yeah, it's you're kind of done it.
I had simply asked for consideration to us looking at doing some kind of partnership on repair of sidewalks in a partnership with the property owners. Because my understanding is sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owner to maintain and or install. And well, that is all fine and good. The condition of our sidewalks in a lot of areas are wanting. It is a public infrastructure, regardless of financial responsibility. And if there's an opportunity for us to spur the maintenance of it,
Yes.
in partnership, that we should give consideration to that. You know, we've talked about this off and on over the last couple of years. Even potentially going so far as to doing bond funding to generate money to pay for it. But all this has to be done keeping in mind the financial constraints that we can't. I don't believe the city's in a position to take total ownership and financial over our responsibility for over all our sidewalks in the city. It would be too big of a burden, so that there has to be a cost share at some point in time, knowing that the ultimate responsibility is the property owners. They have to have some skin in the game. So with that, I talked with Josh, and I've put it to Jeremy and Rob for a consideration of what something would look like, or how we would even try to construct something like, or put together some type of program. And this is the first conversations to that effect.
Okay. I guess kind of since starting it out, I'd like to kind of know what you guys are looking for. Are you looking for like say the city did like a loan of some sort and then we get paid back? I guess to kind of go off that, the problem with that is it can be done where you can, they pay through their taxes on that, but we don't see that money back into our budget immediately that year. It takes years for that to come back. So, now we're bumping up our budgets to cover some of that, or we're covering underneath some kind of capital project to do that, to get that money placed back in. And it takes a while for that. I think kind of knowing what kind of structure you guys would be wanting to look at. I mean, we got some cities throughout Ohio, and some other town or states and stuff on kind of programs of what they've done on programs that are decently running, on some that have failed. But I guess from your guys' standpoint, what direction would you like to go? Would you like to go where we're installing that, or we're hiring a contractor to do that, or kind of still keep that on the homeowner side?
Personally, I'm sorry, Dave, but I'm always in favor of having private contractors work so that they can work and make money, and we can tax their income because they're making money, and it leads so it doesn't put a burden on our crews, a manpower burden that would then take them away from other duties. And I definitely would not want to see any kind of program result in another FTE in public works.
Right.
I'm looking at some sort of incentive to give the homeowner that otherwise wouldn't on their own initiate a repair of their sidewalks, to give them enough incentive to do so. And I'll give an example of a place I used to live. They had a deal, and if you contacted the city and worked with the city to initiate sidewalk repair was in essence a 50-50 split. But if you didn't, and the city came around and said your sidewalks need repair, then you got the whole tab. And they were relatively proactive about ensuring that the sidewalks were in good condition. And I know from my just random going through the city, I wouldn't give our sidewalks a passing grade overall. Some places are particularly bad. And maybe you're I don't know if we do an assessment of our sidewalk conditions and say, but I'm just looking. That's where that's my kind of initial thoughts. This is something that needs to evolve and develop. Honestly.
I was just curious, Grant, you're saying that, where you were before, they would do a 50-50 split if the homeowner came to them and said, hey, I want to get my sidewalks fixed. How did they go? Was that in-house by the city, or do they have a contractor, or do you not remember?
Many of them ago, I do not recall. If it made me guess, I would say that they have a contract. But I don't know that for a fact.
Obviously, we brought in Dave, who's kind of our subject matter expert. And we keep going back to the cost associated with this, and it's not cheap initiative by any means. Whoever takes on the responsibility, if it's contracted, if we share the cost, if they take on the total cost, we front load that big cost on the front end. And to Jeremy's point, we might see it, we might not down the road. That's when we start looking at the dollars associated with this. No one's going to argue that we don't have an opportunity here with our sidewalks. If there are opportunities, but then when we look at the cost associated with this to get it where we feel get a good grade on it, there's other infrastructure that probably should be prioritized before this.
Yeah.
Not that, and
That's a
so
fair point.
again, not saying we don't have something that we need to look forward to, but every time we sit around the table and go, okay, what should this look like for the city of Findlay? Where do we prioritize it? Do we create sectors, and do we, take turns, and how do we do this? And we keep spinning our wheels based on not knowing exactly what direction. That's why without bringing a plan to you, we wanted to have the dialogue to understand what direction we want to go.
Do you have cost ballparks?
Dave might, right off the top of his head, or Jeremy does.
As if we do the work, concrete only for the miles, about $56,100. So there's no labor, no forms, no setup. That is concrete. That's for 1 mile.
1 linear mile of sidewalk.
It's 56, and you said that's no labor.
That's no labor, so there's no form. So it's just the
Cost of
concrete.
it.
So like contractor side, I mean, this is our curb ramp, so the price could change a little bit, but you're looking at to remove, replace, it's about $10 to $12 a square foot for concrete.
Well, what's the,
Years ago, when there's something, so I replaced some sidewalks at rental property. And we get concrete at the city's cost. I don't know if that's cheaper than,
Yeah,
what Steve said.
it does. It's state bid. Okay, so it goes by bag mix. People are about $170, right? So all person has to get two. Just so you interested.
Well, that was going on, and you could search around for contractors, Mine at that time was Deeds Construction, Dave Deeds, and he did some, and the city was sort of, rough on me. So on different things, so that's why I've been on council for 10, 11 years. But I was pretty much forced into it. I was across the street from Lincoln School, rental property. I had no, what am I gonna do? So were they worse on me because I was across the street from Lincoln School? But if we did something like that, I don't know about landowners should, I would think, be able to pay for it. And if they could get the concrete at city's cost.
Actually, I could share some history if you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
First off, when you do a sidewalk program, if you're gonna follow law, it's very similar to a ditch program. And you decide you're gonna do it, you identify the area you're gonna do it, you identify the cost. And then you give the homeowners a chance to prepay. If they don't prepay, and they're gonna have the whole assessment on whether you bonus in or whatever. The people who didn't pay get the additional cost of administering that program put on top. And then that's assessed to the real estate tax and it's supposed to be paid with this bill. You do get a large percentage of it, but not all of it back in the first couple of years, but that's the way it goes. But the interesting thing that happened in 05, 06, when I'm sitting in Rob's chair, it was the number one public issue. Bob Shuck ran and became council president on the issue, or a member of council on the issue. And one of the issues was, to Jim's point, the law has some contradictions in it. One section of the law says you prioritize around schools, and another section has a different set of priorities. And they even went to the point where they had Glenn Springer at the time measure all of the unwalked city property that would need to come in compliance if there was full enforcement of the city. And it turned out it was well over $1 million in walks of work at the time. That was back in 06. But ultimately, the program that they came up with, they couldn't afford to implement at the time because some other things were going on. Was they put out the bid, the engineering management of the project. Peterman won the bid. They were going to do it for about $60,000, the entire city. Their plan was to divide the city into 4 quadrants: north, south, east, west. And in those 4 quadrants, each year they would pick a quadrant. How they did it, I don't know if it was random or if they were just going to go like a clock. And then the 5th year was the high level maintenance project. Then they were going to go in, they were going to identify and do the entire quadrant, set it all up, do the entire debt issuance if necessary, and assessment process. And they would know each year over that 5 years that there would be a set amount that would be done. It looked like a pretty good approach. I don't know exactly what happened with Mary Riddy at the time. Something happened that they ended up not being able to move forward with that. But they came very close. There's an engineer that you guys work with pretty regularly, Todd Jenkins, has a very intimate knowledge about how they were going to approach it. Search for you on this too. And from my office's perspective, from my perspective, if you guys do anticipate some participation in it, there would be a question of how that would be done, how we spur that through my office. But if we are going to do that, we need to have a pretty solid understanding of the entire program and cost of that program over X years. I think how many years, so that I could determine whether it's better to issue interim notes in anticipation of issuing bonds, or if we would be doing a full bonding process, much like the county has done recently for some of the work they've done. That help? I hope.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah. I think that helps get the wheels turning a bit here. I don't think anybody's expecting a solution today.
No, so, and I guess and you're kind of leaning what I was going to say, like, I don't think we're going to come up with a solution. Problem kind of working with Rob, working with Dave, calling Todd Jenkins and kind of getting a couple of decent ideas that we can kind of spitball at you guys on. So that way we're just not, we got kind of direction. We can come up with 2 different ideas. Working with Dave, that way, he's been here quite a while and he kind of knows how that process is working too as well. So we can kind of look at that, it could go from we have a program or it's more of a policy type thing on how we approach things. So I think that's something we could look at. I don't think we're going to have an answer today, but I wanted to get your guys' input on what you were feeling, what you wanted to see kind of from a high level. So that way we kind of had a direction to go with all that.
There was like $40,000 allocated for sidewalks back when we had the money after the pandemic. And then that was
Repurposed or something else.
yeah, Eric did something different. Something like that.
Yeah, we repurposed that into another spot. We did use some to extend up to on 236, where we had a lot of people trying to cross road in a bad spots. We were trying to keep them from, or using the, intersection there, 236, 568. I mean, we do put money in for sidewalks every year, but what that is for us to maintain or repair curb ramps and stuff. So that's for street guys to use to, which is now part of the resurfacing project, but that's for curb ramps, because curb ramps, no matter what, are our responsibility.
Here, one other comment on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's also with the TAP program, some of the paths that you've been, you're probably gonna need to do a quick review of the actual ordinance to determine if it can be adjusted to account for areas where a walk per spec, like 4 foot, 4 inches of concrete or something like that. It's pretty specific. As a matter of fact, it's the exact same ordinance that we had in the 1800s, except it specs concrete instead of full plank, which is kind of interesting. But you may have to change that ordinance so it is in compliance and we don't have any issues with audit down the road. So that's where
There's been like shared use paths and, regular sidewalks.
yeah, so if you guys are saying the asphalt shared use pad is adequate, the ordinance needs to account for that in a way that it doesn't require that walk be put in.
But we can look at that. I mean, overall, 88, like, we gotta follow 88. That supersedes anything
Right.
our ordinance says on that, but yeah. With the tap and multi-use pads and all that, there's set of standards we have to use for what it's classified as. All that ODOT has a lot of those standards, the federal highway and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if it's not updated, we do fall back. We always supersede to what ODOT and federal highway and 88 says on that. So, but that is something we can take a look at and make sure it is updated to the current pro-way.
I think that from a financial standpoint, there's two things we're looking at. One is that ultimately the financial burden stays with the property owner. And that could be a sidewalk program budget where their cost is deferred through a grant or loan or whatever that's paid back through property tax payments, but it's ultimately still the property owner. The property owner goes out, contracts with somebody to do the work, and there's some mechanism involved. The city initiates that says this sidewalk at this property needs updating. That's one side. The flip side of that is more of a voluntary thing where we offer incentive to proactively have the homeowner say, I'll voluntarily spend some of my money if I can do it at a discount, either be it by using city procured concrete or city procured labor pools that lessens the total cost burden. So it becomes kind of a cost share, be it we do it, contractors do it, our materials, whatever. And it's two different ways to do the solution. There's nothing that says you couldn't do both, but I'm curious for you two, what if one of those sounds better than the other, or just your thoughts on that kind of that.
My thought is have a program in place where there's some kind of cost share or discounted purchase, like say on the concrete or the labor. And if that's not enough to get somebody to do it, then we have a fallback policy to say, hey, look, you got to do it. Because I've seen some number of sidewalks around town that are in terrible shape. They're essentially gravel. So I'd like to see something where we can spur some action.
Would you go as far as if the incentive doesn't help on the front end? Would you entertain having teeth on the back end, like some type of enforcement, fines, something, law enforcement? We're trying to understand at what level on the back end if they're non-compliant with what the rules are. We were talking about a few of those examples that, so there's certain people that take advantage of that. We're like, hey, I want these, I'm gonna take advantage of this incentive opportunity, and then there's others that'll
Right.
ignore every statement that we put out, letters, knocking on the doors, whatever. So, I mean, if somebody,
Yeah,
go to the
so-
planning, frame things up and leave them framed, like, well, making progress, and they don't, so.
So one of the issues, like, if you do say, hey, you're doing it, then it gets charged to the property tax, and then it can take years to collect that money.
Josh, one of the advantages, the way they looked at the old program, the city at one point in time, if the owner didn't do it by a certain date, the city actually.
Right.
That was the business we were trying to get out of.
Mhm.
However, that doesn't include the city from through some type of process, whether it's in-house or outsourced through a system. Coordinating the whole thing, so your entire community knows, much like gas aggregation. As we're putting this program together, these are the contractors involved, they've been this job. And that way, because one of your challenges is going to be a person sitting up in national homes, don't really know anybody, they don't have access, they don't have the resources, and they might not be able to even get the contractor to show up for a job. We don't know how that is right now with labor. And if the city coordinates it from that side, you may minimize the need for a significant amount of enforcement.
Yeah, but from your standpoint, if we're gonna have a program, then you gotta have you gotta follow through on it. And I think I've talked with other citizens who said we've had programs, and the challenge is that you gotta execute, and the council has to back it up. And so, yes, I think that there needs to be teeth to it, I guess was the term. I'll go with that.
Well, we'll work together on some options for the committee, and then I'll work with the law director on the teeth side. It will.
And I understand that we're entering August. This is not something that we'll see benefits of this year, but it's at some point in time, we've got to start.
Mhm.
I mean, Jim's talking from 2005, 6. It's been long enough.
Well, then if that program actually would work, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, I mean,
Yeah.
history tells us that there was opportunities missed back then. So,
Whether there was a bad plan or bad enforcement.
Well, and you have to manage the kind of stuff. There's an assessment.
Right.
thank you.
All right. Recommendation to council,
There is none.
none.
Josh, could I speak for a second? You want me to talk?
No, it's gonna just be administration or committee. Thanks, Nick.
Call sector, no. That's a real simple one.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right, sidewalks, not required in cul-de-sacs with less than 6 fronting homes. I know you've talked about this before, Grant, or
It's very simple. There's a kid. The law is written, says, hey, you don't need sidewalks inside a cul-de-sac. That's fine and dandy until the back of the cul-de-sac is on a major thoroughfare that happens on what used to be Technology, maybe it's still Technology Boulevard, what is now in essence directly south of the new wellness entrance into the parking lot of the wellness center above Blanchard Valley's new one. You can see the sidewalks stop or the backyards of 2 properties on a cul-de-sac. They didn't put in sidewalks because they didn't need to. The law is poorly written, gives them a pass. It shouldn't in the future. The solution for that sidewalk is either these folks put it in or we do, or the hospital does, or a combination of all 3. But we should update the code to be more, to make it known that the only place, funny thing is, there are sidewalks inside this cul-de-sac, but not on the exterior.
Right.
And should either we should update the law so that that doesn't happen again. And then on the sides, go and get this fixed. Because hey, here we have this great wellness campus, and the only way you can walk south is if you go into the street. So I asked the law director change the city ordinance to ensure that sidewalks are required on the external parts of the portions of cul-de-sacs that are fronting, that are on sac streets.
So properties on cul-de-sacs that have been be adjacent to on other streets, essentially on the backside.
Yeah.
Are there other examples? Because we were looking and.
I haven't found any others.
Okay, we couldn't either. And we were discussing this. The frontage actually, as you pointed out, has pedestrian
Of all things.
but. And of course, Jeremy, not to steal his quote that he uses a lot. Our responsibility is to provide a safe path, not necessarily the most convenient path. And you do have sidewalks that do.
But this is a stupid path.
That the point is, it doesn't have to be convenient.
What is just like two properties in this area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Condo association.
It's one parcel.
It's two, but unless that's all one.
It's all one.
It's all
one.
one on the others.
Okay.
An association with multiple houses. So. Yeah,
And when we're hiding behind the written word of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're doing a disservice to our citizens. Sorry, Mr. Engineer, don't agree with you on that. I'm just asking the law director to fix the law, and if we think that there's a requirement for sidewalks on this, contact the condo association and tell them to put them in.
These are condo properties.
I believe they're single. I think they're single family.
I think that it's on the owner's website. It's listed as one property. So I'm guessing it's a condo. If it's all on one property and there's multiple houses, it's gotta be condos.
There's three structures. So. I just want to make sure I have your point because I will relay this to
Yeah.
Rob Fighter to review this. And
This is a council one.
Somebody told me to put a sidewalk in my backyard, I tell them to take a hike.
Well, the backyard is the frontage of a thoroughfare. And we have houses that are on corners that have to do sidewalks on two, possibly sometimes three sides. It's not if it's the back or side yard, it's where the house is located. And I understand people being upset about creating sidewalks to nowhere, which is what happened at the hospital, with that health clinic up at 99 and North Main Street. And put up a bunch of sidewalks to nowhere, and they're still nowhere. And I bought it from the citizen. But it's with the hospital, but that's not the case here. So I'm recommending is that we direct the law director to,
Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I motion request of the law director to revise this ordinance to remove the
Remove the exemption for cul-de-sacs?
no exemption from cul-de-sac properties touching our cul-de-sac road, part of the roadways. I don't know, talk with Rob to. So you understand.
Clean up the language.
Yeah.
Is,
And then,
I don't know if it's editing what's there. It might be adding or completely
Yeah.
changing.
It could be a rewrite.
yes, I'm not gonna tell him how to.
Right.
Yeah, let him do his thing, but I don't know if it's editing existing. It might be adding or replacing.
Like, that might be the most.
So I further add that, was that, the administration look into the, to ensure the enforcement of this on that one property.
All right, so the motion on the table is to change the requirement of cul-de-sacs where the, essentially the rear property abuts a thoroughfare, has to put in a sidewalk.
Yes.
All right.
That is my motion.
Motion, I will second that motion. Discussion.
So we're asking for his opinion,
No, we're asking him
change it.
to update the ordinance so that it requires a sidewalk for cases like, Councilman Russell put forward.
And I would assume like any other ordinance, we're going to do it for 3 readings now, so.
Draw up the legislation changes.
Nobody gets grandfathered in.
Nope. Further discussion. All right.
No.
All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Carries unanimously.
But just to clarify, would that have to come back here or is it gonna go right to council?
Right
Okay,
to council.
just making sure.
Okay. Need to bring it back here.
Thank you.
Break this up. Where you already you want. So I voted, yeah.
E-bikes?
Yeah, we'll do e-bikes. Yes.
Okay.
You want to lead that, Rob?
Well, after it was brought up, we realized that technology, we have city ordinances about electric scooters and bikes and things like that. But time has changed, technology's changed. Bikes with motors have become faster and yeah, more dangerous. And so we wanted to, the conversation was around having the law director review city ordinances, ORC, things like that, to look at the definitions of what scooters were, bikes were, et cetera. And then see if we needed to make any changes to our current city ordinances to create a better environment, safer environment for the traveling pedestrian public. So he really wanted to be part of this. And when we were able to get this on the agenda today, or I'm sorry, the scheduled this meeting, he unfortunately is not available to be here, but he did put together some preliminary statements and comments that I provided you. He did reference a couple of city ordinances that are part of the e-bikes, and I did print those out for you as a reference. And then in all this, you know, you also want to go back and quantify it, see if there is a problem. And I had talking to the command staff, Chief Matthias and his team about this. He was able to have someone pull for the last year since April 1st of 2024. We've been talking about this for a long time. This was back in April, we started this. That there were actually 6 incidents, but different areas of the community, and the detail of it doesn't go into, like, I think it was just accidents, not necessarily injury. Is that correct, Chief?
Correct.
So, so are there incidences? Yes, the severity luckily hasn't been there, but doesn't mean we can't have a discussion about if we need to change something. So,
Personally, I think an electric vehicle, any kind of vehicle on a sidewalk going 20 mile an hour is too fast.
hey, Jeremy, you actually had the.
Yeah, so ODNR and ODOT multimodal book, they allow class 1 and class 2 on shared expense. or ODNR allows pretty much class 1 and class 2 e-bikes on there, any kind of walking path, shared use path, multi-use path, sidewalks, as long as it's got to be a max of 20 mph. I think that's the big sticking part. It has to be under 20 mph. The class 3s, because they can go above that, are not allowed on theirs. So if you're kind of looking at what ODNR is doing, especially with all their trails, they allow class 1, class 2, but not class 3.
Just thinking, just residential neighborhoods or just
Right.
number of walkers that you see on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody riding a scooter at 20 miles an hour, seems to be excessive.
How does FPD police this at all now?
A lot of it's warnings and
Are they given? I mean, is this something that is,
it's probably more a verbal warning. I'd have to look back and see if it's more of a written versus a verbal warning.
but you hear from your officers that they are actually making these warnings?
The big issue for whether it's a 25 mph zone or a 35 mph zone, there's people from all parts of the city and they're on all the roadways. So I mean, it's not just downtown, it's Tiffin Avenue, Center Street. It's avenue getting around town. And it's, speed, it's gonna be an issue.
Well, it's not only, from my perspective, it's not only the speeds, it is it's the same as a bike on a sidewalk going northbound next to the southbound lanes of the street, so that they're coming in from a direction that you do not expect, but to see that type of speed. And from my perspective, you see it at Baldwin and Main all the time. I would think that would be some of the accidents you have is. So probably comes as a surprise, but bicyclists and bikes don't necessarily slow down or stop at intersections. I'm surprised at the low volume of accidents. But I would wonder,
That's reported too.
So
Some
that's-
of our,
so that's the tip of the iceberg type of thing?
some of these crashes involve a minor injury and they don't want to go fracture forward. So
There are, in my neighborhood, there are these scooters. Probably about this big, tires and everything, and you got I don't know, probably not even a 10-year-old flying around in and out of alleys, from West Sandusky to West Main Cross. I've seen 3 just about get hit. I mean, they'll look, somebody going 20, 30 miles an hour and they come through an alley and they're little, just little things.
Well, we're seeing more of this.
So back to the age limit on one of these.
Well, the age limit, and then are they actually being compliant with like recommendations of wearing helmets and things like that? So the classes that he brought up, the 1, 2, and 3, different speeds, different capabilities of these vehicles, and then following the roadway rules, the rules of the road. Well, and these kids aren't old enough to understand what those are, and they're writing them on it. So that's concerning. My concern is the speed of some of these on sidewalks when you have walkers, strollers, whatnot, even the younger kids on pedal bikes that should be on the sidewalk. And then you have this motorized vehicle that's could cause some trauma. So I don't have an answer here today for you, but I wanted to provide this information for you to review. Again, our law director wanted to be involved in this conversation. I think this is a conversation that we need to continue. I don't know the outcome of it, if there's a change in the ordinances. He wanted to start with, as I pointed out earlier, and what was provided you, he wanted to start with definitions to understand what things really are defined as. Do we need to change some of ours based on what those definitions are? Obviously, we have man staff and the police involved in this conversation as we try to refine it, if there is something to be refined.
Well, you definitely have to look at definitions. I mean, I don't know how you guys, you see the guys on the post polished around at 30 plus miles an hour and have tail lights and, you know, what the heck is that? But it's an adult driving it, the other, or driving it. They're in a public right of way. I would think that they used to complain about the Pintos gas tanks. How do they somehow let one wheels on the road? There's not bumpers and airbags. But then I could say the same thing about people who drive golf carts up and down the streets, or how do you guys approach it? When you see a guy on a one wheel or a scooter and he's blowing by at 40 miles an hour, is it?
They weigh a lot of pros and cons against each situation. Same thing with enforcement of snowmobiles. There's no way in God's green earth you're going to catch a snowmobile in December. So a lot of times you don't chase or you don't catch up to that person or persons. But we still need to do the right enforcement efforts when there is a violation. Yeah, those opportunities. So I mean, that's what we've been looking at for all the classes. Haven't had to get on the multi-pass and that, but it's coming. And why it is you're going to have people that's out there doing stuff, those high rates of speed, and got people walking, jogging, doing things the right way. I mean, things like that. Those type of multi-pass.
I wouldn't think that this is something FPD wants to make a priority in. It's enforcement.
Not a priority, but it's definitely something that's concerning. The more you allow it to happen, the more the bad things can happen, especially like you said, lights on some of these vehicles, so they're flat there out at night. What get on a sidewalk or on the street. So an accident waiting to happen. It's not even, yes, these, they're not so the severity, but talking. Wow. 25, 35 mile an hour in a vehicle and then involved some type of scooter, e-bike, whatever you want to call it. It's a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, not a priority, but something that we definitely like for the community to consider.
What would you like to see us consider on it? Just a simple cleanup of the ordinance.
Just putting up of the ordinances and say for identification, stuff like that, especially for enforcement. I mean, it goes anywhere. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg. We have to start getting into how big a CC motor it is for a mini bike and stuff like that. So I mean, you guys and gals have a good idea of what they're dealing with, but Rob said it, the technology and everything else is just going so fast to trying to keep up with it. Ordinance have been in existence for a number of decades. We're just trying to catch up with where it should be.
But this committee isn't needed to ask the law director to review our ordinances and ensure they reflect the times and reflect changes to ORC. I mean, I would think, not that he's got anything else, I mean, I'm sure he's got you that he could do, but.
Well, I would agree with that. And again, he was intrigued by it because he was like, oh yeah. And then we start, looking at the different scenarios, different types of vehicles and speeds. And it was like, okay, let me wrap my head around what this looks like definition wise. And so clearly I think there's an opportunity here. And I think he's willing to look at this to perhaps bring it to council, that the ordinance recommendations just from him. And then you can have that discussion at the council level, unless you feel if he gets into it and he's like, it should go back to committee for more debate, then that can be his recommendation.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea there, but
I don't know that we.
I think
I
most
don't know
likely
that we have a place to have in the Rob reviewing, there's a lot of record reviewing the existing ordinances and bringing them.
I think
Up to
initially,
date.
I mean, if there's something that,
conversation
there's
like we
something more
have.
less intensive than just cleaning things up. If there's something more, then come back to the committee. Otherwise, just take it straight to council.
That makes sense.
Still, if we do anything with the ordinance, you're not gonna catch these little guys. You know, time to call the police, they're, you know, there's 3 alleys away or 3 streets and, you know, it's ridiculous.
But we're not, nobody on council's suggesting that. I'm just reading the second bullet under scooters. ORC allows operation on streets. Oh, no, excuse me. Third bullet, the city law can set our own rules where they can be used or prohibit them altogether. Nobody suggested that we prohibit motorized scooters, right? Do you think anybody on council has their desire? And it was, is that what is FPE? Is the administration suggesting we a prohibition? Because that's never been my personal intent.
When this was brought up, that wasn't the direction that I ever thought we were going.
Okay. I think it's interesting. You can't run them unless you're 16, but you can buy them when you're.
Well, mom and dad can buy them.
But yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of kids that are under the age of 15 that are going by it pretty, I almost hit one with a lawnmower yesterday, so. I think you were thinking worse of it. Well, I'm straight up.
Okay. Thanks, Jeremy.
Chief, is there direction you want on this though? Other than law director?
I would say, yeah, I mean, if, look at the, while you're looking at it, and doesn't obviously bring it to council for updates for to build more, several different ordinances. If they need updated, that's good with us.
I agree.
Do we have, out of curiosity, do we have any stats out of the hospital or the whatever the urgent cares about accidents and on these things?
I can get it. I don't have it, but their trauma program has to keep very detailed stats on things like this, like the mechanism of injury and like the device or vehicle or whatever it was that caused it. They were involved in. Yeah, there's details, and I could reach out to them just for curiosity's sake.
Or for national stats that are saying these things are.
The American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma is very detail oriented when it comes to collecting data because they collect the data on what's happened and then you see it on left, then you turn around and then they can actually drive prevention based on what's happened. So, I mean, seatbelts, for instance, right? You start collecting data, God knows when, on child restraints and seatbelts, and now they actually said, hey, we can prevent things by having people mandated. It becomes a law, and you see those trends. They've drastically dropped years over years. So that's just one simple example, but
All right, recommendation.
What? Once again, we're really don't have. We're not asking.
We're not having council doing it.
Council information. We had a conversation and asked Rob keep doing what he's doing.
Good recommendation.
So, yeah, I would. The other, know something, Jim.
One more thing. Parking fines update.
thank you. So this has been a conversation that we've been having internally for quite some time. Seems like it's the same story over and over again, that fees and fines and rates haven't been changed for quite some time, and yet costs continue to go up associated with providing the services. So we started looking at them, had command staff pull some data on our current fine structure that parking enforcement actually uses and the fines associated with those.
Excuse me, is there an extra copy?
Thank you.
So this is just broke down in different tables. The first table is the current 2024 violations and the cost associated with generating those fines. And then there's three proposed options to change. One of the things that really started this, other than looking at the fees and the fines and parking, was the parking department and parking enforcement actually had to have a subsidy out of the general fund this last year for the first time in quite a long time. Now, some of that, or actually most of it, was associated with the wage increases that we implemented. But again, cost went up. So with that, we looked at the cost and the revenues. And so did a little breakdown, and I have a couple proposals. And then the initial proposal that I had. So quick, before I start rambling on the different boxes, top left, as I pointed out, is the current situation for 2024, and the total of just parking ticket revenue is 49,000 and change. And then looking at the situation that we came up with in 2025, on the top right-hand corner table, you break down the revenue associated. Now that is all revenue for the parking department, and that is parking lot lease fees, miscellaneous revenues, parking fines, bad checks, etc. So, and I use 24's revenue as a placeholder going into 25. The proposed expense budget that was approved by council for 25 was 110,000 and change. And of course, as we like to do, we assume, because you can't guarantee, the assumption is 100% of that is spent. So the subsidy for 25 would have been 14,000. Believe though the subsidy that was asked of or put in by the auditor was around 10,000. But anyhow, doesn't matter what the subsidy was. In fact, there was a subsidy. That's more important. So putting together different scenarios based on what the tickets issued are, and what we're trying to accomplish. The proposed change, number one, actually was increasing each parking fine or violation by from $5 to 10, and then the $10 to 25, and then leaving handicap violations as they currently are. And that increased the revenue to 88,000 and change, and that covered the subsidy from the general fund. However, between that scenario being presented, I worked out through the command staff and myself. We then went through the scenario where we're going to be losing the revenue from lots H and I. So then I came up with a couple other scenarios. And that was the proposed change number 2 and proposed 3. So again, taking the same format that we currently have. So the single parking violation from current $5 to $15, and the other parking violations from 10 to 25, and leaving handicap as it currently is. And that increases the fine revenue to 96,000. So if you then take these dollars and then put it back into the actual budget, how it is, current revenue minus the H&I lease, the difference between the current revenue fines from the proposed is an increase of 47,000 and change, is your total revenue of 130. 25 budget, which the 26 would remain fairly flat to that. Your net buffer, however you want to say it, is positive variance of 20,000, and we don't need a subsidy from the general fund. So there are some assumptions with that, Lieutenant Hill and I talked through this quite a bit about, the unpaid tickets or the progressive tickets. If you're there for longer than 2 hours, you keep getting those progressions. So there's a little bit of variability in this, but to compare apples and apples, to actually look at where we are to eliminate the subsidy, create a little bit of buffer as expenses change. I don't want to come back next year and go, we're going to want to increase these again, because these are not popular decisions. I understand that. And then the third proposed, it cleans it up and it's a little more It's easy. You don't have to make a decision. It's basically one fine, flat rate across regardless of what the violation is for parking, and then the handicap. And that's a fine of $20. And then you would actually, obviously, it'd be more than the proposed number two. And obviously the net buffer would be a little more, but I wanted to bring this to you as options. My recommendation, talking to the command staff, is the highlighted blue proposed number two. Discussion, question. Lieutenant Hill or Chief, do you have anything to add to that before they ask questions?
But when Rob asked me to look at this, I looked at some of the surrounding cities. I looked at Bowling Green, Columbus, Toledo, Shetland.
Sorry, that information is going to reference.
And kind of tried to gauge where we were currently compared to some of these other cities. And the handicap one seemed to be right on par with all of them. So that's why I thought that we were going to send him. But we were lacking on some of our other ones. I mean, I like Dublin's idea of one set fee. I mean, it is what it is. Any violation is this amount and you kind of go. I don't think we need to go Dublin's route with $67, but I tried to look at all of those things, and what the numbers don't include is if you don't pay it on time. There's a late fee of $25 if you don't pay it within the 5 days. So I think that was where some of what we actually brought in compared to my figures is the difference. I can't calculate. If everyone pays on time, great, then we're going to be here, but they don't, and that's why the numbers are a little higher.
What's the trend over the last few years on tickets issued? Has it gone up, down, flat?
I would say we're trending probably up this year, but it's pretty steady.
I usually don't see much of a change year to year.
I have that. It's fairly flat, but there is a little variability. Yeah, in 2020, in 2022, we were in the 42 to 4,500, which is just a little less than where we are in 24, 4,700. And then, I'm sorry, total. I apologize. I was looking at that is total. Yes. But then in 22, 23, we had a big uptick. 22, we had 6,100 compared to current 4,700. And then it kind of trended down 5,623. And then now we're back down, as I said, 4,700. So a little bit of variability, big spike in 22, but it's an outlier. I'd have to really dive into what caused that. So.
About the time everything opened back up after COVID too, we're opening pretty heavy.
Well, it's also different personnel.
Personnel, so enforcement could have been different.
Chase developed for about 5 years. So depends on where that fell into place on that. Full person going out, any person.
So
That's
is this other parking violation, that's a second ticket for the same vehicle? Is that what other means?
How do you guys apply that other parking violation? Is that,
So this is Rob's.
yeah, Rob's spreadsheet.
on the 24.
Yeah, it's a single parking violation. What's the definition of other?
$5 is usually a downtown
No, what's-
violation.
The other's probably
Others
gonna be the,
is usually what an officer would write and stuff. So if you're parked at a fire hydrant, signs prohibited.
Oh,
That's more aggressive because it's more
More serious
serious
violation.
violation. So that's a $10, starts at a $10 violation. The $5 is mostly the 2-hour time
That's your
block.
time.
Yeah. Park. And then they get.
So that-
Ticketed.
so that person who is a chronic downtown parking time violator just pays the same amount the whole time.
well, it depends on where he's parking. So if I park in the 100 block, or let's say the 200 block south of me, and Chase marks their tires or uses his devices or
Yeah.
mark the plate and everything, he comes back 2 hours later and it's still there, he's gonna give it the $5 ticket for excessive time. He comes back 2 hours later, or what have it, and it's still there, or it's in the same block, then he's gonna give it another progressive ticket for $10. So now they're up to 15.
Yeah.
And then it keeps going at the $10 rate until that vehicle puts in and it resets the following day.
But there are people that historically, they'll pay those fines. It's cheaper than if they want to park right in front of their business, so they want to park somewhere
Yeah, I'll take the $20, $50 I'm gonna get for the day and be done, because I don't wanna walk 4 blocks.
I might have worked for a local employer that used contract employees who said Finley's parking tickets was the cheapest parking they ever encountered anywhere they worked.
Yep. Haven't changed for decades. Once since I've been.
All right, so under proposed change 3, then. Chase does his checks, car's there for 4 hours. So that's another $20 tacked on top of the initial, or is it progressive on the initial charge?
I think that if the initial citation is $20, then yes, when he comes back around for the progressive, I think it would have to be more than $20. To show that.
Well, you mentioned, somebody mentioned like parking in front of the fire hydrant.
To me, $25 seems pretty cheap.
Yeah, I would think that would be that'd be fine right off the bat.
Well, they're 10 now, so that's where we're at. Right.
And, you know, I've had people complain about that, but, well, I'm telling you, yeah, it might be a $10 fine, but if the fire department needs to go to that house,
Your window out.
you're gonna have a whole lot more damage to your car that, you know, that's on you. So, I mean, I think either push that out of the way, buff the windows and go through, but I agree, I think it should be.
Well, like on a fire hydrant, I would be at $50, for example. Or something like that. There should be some disincentive to do that. It shouldn't be the same as, because if you do it at the same amount, to me, that's just overstaying my welcome. And that's a 2-hour, 5-minute parking ticket. Or, you know, what do you do?
Mhm.
But I also like the thought of it being progressive. You know, $20 for the first ticket, $3 for the second time I did the ticket. So now and that's for that car. And the next one is like 80. And all of a sudden, okay, car who wants to overpark in Finley. You know, it's no longer cheap parking. But I don't have to enforce it, and I don't know what our enforcement software does as for being able to keep track of.
Oh, that would be not a problem.
But I'm also thinking, on Monday, they get the first ticket, and on Wednesday, they get the second one. On Wednesday, the ticket is double the Monday's ticket.
So
That's not how that works.
no, so
Resets for 24 hours.
24 hours is the way it is. So, but that's probably the biggest complaint I get is, hey, I parked here in the 200 block of South Main. I went in, grabbed my coffee, down. I came back for a meeting and I reparked in the same block. And I got this ticket and I was only there 15 minutes. Well, no, because when you were there the first time, when you got marked, and when you came back later on that day, it doesn't know that you left. I mean, because we have to mark the tire by the plates. We can't chalk the wheel anymore. So where that chalk mark would come off. So yeah, can't park in the same block during that 24-hour period over the 2-hour time limit. If you do, then you're gonna get the citation. So that's the biggest complaint I get. So every 24 hours, it comes again.
Can't chalk the tires anymore.
Now, there was a ruling out in Michigan where you can't physically chalk a vehicle's tire. But what we do now is Chase on his little handheld phone device, he'll mark the position of the valve stems on 2 of the tires. Normally it's the curbside tires. And then take pictures of the plate. That's how he chalks it. Then when he comes back by, he just has to type the plate in and yep, it tells him right there that, yep, that car's been there.
So they can check the location of the bow stem. So say somebody did go across town, came back a couple hours later, parked in the same block or the same spot.
Still a violation.
Still a violation, even though the valve stem changed position, and I can see why.
And I can see people's argument about that. I mean, I really can, but there's no other way for us to do it unless I mean, it would be very hard on them to try to figure out, okay, yes, you were here for 15 minutes the first time, and you were here for 40 minutes next time. And that's why I think that ordinance is for that 24-hour period, not parking in the same block or lot. Now, I go to the 100 block, and then the next 2 hours I go to the 200 block. So what it was trying to prevent was me moving one space up every 2 hours. And that way I have front row parking for my spot, so. To go with different blocks, they're, okay.
Is the goal of this to cover the costs of our parking enforcement, or is an alternate goal to ensure parking turnover in areas, or what?
I think it started out as offsetting the operating expenses, so it didn't have to be subsidized by the general fund, number one. And then you start looking at how we can actually keep the flow of parking moving through and hold people accountable for the actual rules. So it is twofold. It started out with eliminating the subsidy. But we can accomplish a couple different things. I think that's good. I have talked to, if we went with a flat rate, like the proposed number 3, and I mean, there are other violations, like a fire hydrant that should have a steeper. Okay,
What percentage of the parking fines are in downtown?
I would venture majority, I would probably say 80%, 70-80%.
I assume it's kind of like, it's kind of like where the shirt bikes are, that's where we're patrolling downtown.
Yeah. The officers do a good job, I say fire hydrants, too close to a stop sign. Parking the wrong way on the street, so I mean, those type of violations, but yeah, there's, like you said, different degrees of, too close to a stop sign causes a crash, breaking a fire hydrant, those type of emergencies, parking the wrong way on the street. Start looking at, there's 30 different violations. Cited person for it.
A lot of reversing.
Yeah, you start listing it as 1 fee or separate fees for each one.
Oh, yeah, like this one's cumbersome.
It is. For Chase, it's a lot easier. For the officers, it's sheet, stuff like that.
Is parking too close to an alley or driveway also one of those? Josh, to, Rob's point earlier, by definition, state is defined the parking enterprise fund, so it is most careful. So it's appropriate that they're making that a primary goal.
Are you looking for us to endorse one of these strategies, or to endorse specific dollar amounts per fine, or to give you the yay or nay for increasing fines to your whatever you deal with, whatever the administration thinks is appropriate in order to make the fund whole?
Hope that the recommendation from this committee would be to support the increase to the proposed. And I will then
Well, there's 3 proposals.
recommended proposal, sorry, which I recommended number 2 to keep the format as is and just increase the number 1, number 2 for single parking violation and other parking violations and maintain handicapped. Again, some of the discussion we've had, there's benefit to proposed number 3, keeping it simple, keep it 1 fine for all violations, but then you get into the situation where the fire hydrant, right? Maybe. So I'm not here to try to go in where we currently are and what we set out to accomplish. I'm not here to really gouge people. I think making progress to accomplish what we wanted to offset the subsidy and create some more accountability by enforcement, put some teeth behind it, I should say, then I think we're accomplishing that with number 2. I don't know if you have any input on that, or I mean, we talked about this.
We've talked about
Multiple times.
I think moving, any of the proposals is moving in the right direction. But I agree, and going with the $15 for the single parking violation, that's gonna be your, time limits. And then we would have the progressive over top of that. You start dealing with parking, and I could write you a speeding ticket and cost you $150 and thank me and shake my hand, and we go off and, get a beverage afterwards. You write a parking ticket
For
and,
$5,
yeah. Wow, that's not good.
It's part of the, not put you on the spot, but are the actual fines thinking they used to be, but they are. They do, I guess would have to. Why it's like, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm paying that.
Right.
Can we take them out of? That you,
That's a broad question.
I support policing them, especially to cover the cost. And on the sides of it's a for a fire violation. You're a lot more strict on that than what we're at.
So
What
What-
do they go with a handicap?
if I if just spitballing here for to move this along, the recommendation from the committee would be for us to adjust these for the subsidy and however else we want to state it, that I can actually we can circle back about if there's other violations like the fire hydrant that should have a different level of enforcement or fine.
So the majority of those initial single parking figures are, the other parking violation is 35103, and then it goes from A down to maybe N or O. So that's why they're all listed. So if we're changing one of those, they would have to probably move out of that ordinance into its own ordinance, kind of like what the handicap is. It's in its own separate ordinances, or we could come up with two ordinances saying, okay, these fine, or this ordinance is these subsections, and this one's this one, if you want to come up with different
Well, Rob's
categories of.
Yeah, Rob could.
severity.
we're gonna have to prepare legislation to do regardless.
He can get that organized.
I wanted to have this discussion at this level so that we can really go into the weeds and have good dialogue and then however it needs to be presented to council. So I just wanted you to be informed. Hopefully get your support on doing this and then I can work with fighter command staff to get something prepared to come to council.
I motion to the legislation be fair to implement an increase in parking fines for the primary purpose of covering the costs in the what budget in the whatever budget that is,
Cover the parking enforcement budget.
parking enforcement budget.
Are you endorsing one of these specific changes or leaving it open?
Leave it open or endorse one if you want. I think that we presented feedback that says,
Yeah, if you want me to go through and relook at some of the more serious offenses that we might consider, then we can come up with.
Thank you.
When you brought up the fire hydrant, I was focused on how it was structured now, and if we could streamline it by eliminating and have one, I looked at those, but you brought up fire hydrant, and then you look at what it is, I'm like, I think we can probably circle back and if there's a decision on the severity of a few to break them out, then that could be part of that legislation as well, but we'll still.
we can defer to your review of that. We're still gonna see it for free. When you present it, you're gonna present new code and then you have a table of, here's what this costs under the old code. Here's or under the old one, here's what it is under the new one. And if fire hydrants went to $50, I would not object. I would vote aye. But to me, $15 with an escalation in there. I don't mind $20 with an escalation and the other. But I'd endorse the recommendation. I'd endorse. Which we've given you feedback, but the motion would be to request legislation be drawn up to change parking fees to cover the cost of the parking enforcement budget. Yeah,
I like that.
All right. Motion's on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Jim seconds. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, aye. Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
That is all that's on the agenda. That'll conclude our streets, parking and sidewalk committee.
Thank you.
As you guys get updated revenues, if you don't mind sending them to me, that way I can put them in, because we're starting the budget process for.
Absolutely, like we do every year.
Now that it's